Hi everyone, I'm Kim Wardle, Commercial Director at TDA Creative, the leading talent agency specializing in design, product, and tech. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of our TDA Talks, where we sit down with some of the world's top leaders to explore the future of design, innovation, and leadership. Today, I'm beyond excited to be joined by my good friend, Élida Cruz, Head of Ops for Experience Design at Capital One, based in New York. Ellie, it's always a pleasure, but why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourself and your journey?
Yeah, thanks, Kim. I'm super happy to be here and having this talk with you. My journey to where I am now is long and varied. And I think anyone who's been in the business for a while or has worked for a number of years probably has a pretty circuitous route. It's not just a linear progression. It's funny. I started out as a customer service rep in a tech startup. I studied art history in college. I thought I was going to become an art historian and a curator and do all of this stuff, and didn't have the money to go back to school when I graduated. So I wound up being a customer service rep in a tech startup. And what I didn't realize what I was doing then was actually a lot of empathy research because I was the person who was on the other end of the phone with the customers. And I would take their feedback to the product and tech teams and say, hey, I think we need to work on these things. And I didn't even realize that's what I was doing. Um, so I started out doing that. By the time I left that organization, I was leading a technical support and customer support team, like 15 people. I had no business managing that number of people. Um, and then this is really when sort of the .com started. And I was like, well, I need to find out what's going on there. And so I wound up at an agency called Razorfish, which was great.
Yeah.
And I started out as a project manager because at that point I was like, well, I don't know what I'm organized. I like to talk to people. I like to get things done. Okay, I'll try being a project manager. And that's where I really learned so much about business operations. How do you write a statement of work? How do you write a master services agreement? How do you create a project plan? How do you put a team together? How do you manage expectations of clients? And so I did that for a number of years. I ended up leading a whole project management team there. I became a program manager, which was really looking after a really large account with multiple projects, and a huge budget and things I had never done before and had to do invoicing and all this financial stuff that I was like, how do I even do this? Um, and from there, I kind of went on. I spent a number of years in marketing and advertising, being a program lead. So, really thinking more broadly globally, how do you roll things out? Working with a design system, working with consistent assets, managing different time zones. It was bananas. And then I found myself at Frog Design, where I started to learn much more about the intersection between digital and physical design.
Mhm.
And I was a program manager and a program lead there, and led operations and worked in business development and led clients and learned a ton about facilitation, about design thinking, service design, systems design, and how you kind of do all of that. Um, and so I then found myself moving from Frog Design to an organization called Fjord, which was later acquired by Accenture. And there I got to wear so many different hats. I started out as a North American lead of operations. So looking across the studios in North America, starting with two tiny studios, scaling that to nine. I did everything from like put toner in the printer and decided like what holidays we had off. I oversaw HR, IT, business development. I helped create our master services agreement, made sure we had contracts, introduced the idea of program leadership and program management, did a ton of stuff. And so after a while, I kind of got bored doing the operations stuff, and I moved into leading the learning organization. And so bringing service design thinking and practice to not only all of the Fjord associates and employees, but also Accenture more broadly. At one point, teaching 400,000 plus Accenture employees about design thinking,
Mhm.
and doing a whole train the trainer. And that was like so fun, and getting to travel all over and teach and be part of that. And such a great group of people. And then I kind of got bored doing that. And so our CEO tapped me to be his chief of staff and to lead. our strategic operations team. And basically, what that was looking after any kind of new offerings that Fjord was developing. So, new capability, new offering, new way of doing something. My job was to really make sure that there was a clear business case and a product market fit or capability market fit across the globe,
Mhm.
that we had the right funding, that we had the right resources to roll it out, that we had the right communications, and that it was something that would push us forward while also being the chief of staff to our CEO. And then he tapped me to lead our New York studio. So that was the care and feeding of like 70 people across business development, front end engineering, interaction design, service design, visual design, and really just looking after that whole team. And it was while I was in that role that Capital One reached out to me looking for a head of design for their commercial bank. And the whole time I was like, "Hey, I didn't go to design school. I'm not a practitioner."
Yeah.
And they were like, "That's cool. That's, you've got a whole long career in design. And we really need someone who understands the business and can work with people and elevate craft." And I was like, "Okie dokie." So I've been here for 6.5 years. And over
Yeah.
that time, I've had a ton of different roles. I've led our commercial design team, our small business bank, small business card teams, our Capital One software team. Um, and all of those teams. And now I'm the head of operations for experience design across all of XT.
There is literally no end to your talent, Ellie. Like jackknife.
Thank you.
And obviously you've been in leadership for a long time. But what really excites you the most though about being a design leader, especially at Capital One? What's so great about it?
Honestly, the thing that gets me out of bed every day
Hmm.
is working with people. And it's the co-creation, the problem solving with a diverse group of people, getting lots of different ideas. It's kind of being in a complicated, I love a messy, complicated problem. Um, and I'm the kind of person that really wants to bring everyone in to help solve that problem. I'm not a lone wolf when it comes to that. I definitely want to make sure that people feel invested in how we're solving those problems. And then it's also seeing my team learn and grow in their career and advance. And I love to see people advance in their careers, get that promotion, get more responsibility, take on new challenges, and be there for them. And if I had any tiny piece of support in helping them get there, then that to me is like one of the most rewarding things. And then like finally just doing the right thing for our customers and our users while also delivering on our business goals.
Hmm.
I think that balance of making sure that we're doing what our users need, but also delivering what's right for us as a company, is important, and making sure that that balance is there.
Yeah, love that. Thank you. And what about those that are aspiring to be into leadership? Like, what would you say are the three most known tips for the journey?
I think it's really important that I think authenticity is
Yeah.
really important as a leader in general, whether you're a design leader or any other kind of leader. Being your authentic self and understanding what you stand for and what your values are, I think is really important. And that's just across the board, good
Yeah.
leadership quality. I think when you're looking at a design leadership role, you definitely have to have craft. That craft can be a lot of different things. For me, it's more relationships, organizational design, thinking about um, how our design fits within a larger ecosystem. And so developing that vision, staying adaptable, making sure that you're hearing from lots of different parts of the business, lots of different audiences, lots of different customer needs, and bringing that all into whatever design solution you're going to have.
Yeah.
So I think casting that wide net of how does this solution fit within a larger ecosystem?
Yeah.
So you can't stay like myopically focused on just one thing. You really have to think more broadly. And then I think context is really important. So learning to speak the language of the business, really digging into what those business objectives are. What are the goals of the business so that you can bring that to bear as you think about the customer problems you're trying to solve.
Mhm.
Um, It also helps with stakeholder relationships. Not everyone knows design, not everyone um, has a clear sense of what that experience should be. And it's important that you are able to adapt your language to who your stakeholders are.
Right.
And then I would say the last thing is you really just have to be ready for change. Change is inevitable. And
Yeah.
that could be an organizational shift, it could be a shift in strategy. You need to be able to adapt and pivot. And also, a transition from an IC, an individual contributor, to a people leader is one of the most challenging parts of a career journey. And that really requires you to have a really strong team under you. You have to make sure that they've got clear direction, but they also have agency to exercise good judgment, and that you create the conditions for them to thrive and can do things on their own based on what's best for the company and for the users. Um, but having that mindset that you won't necessarily be deep in every single thing
Yeah.
anymore as you become a leader is important, and that your superpowers can really be much more broad about how you think about working in a larger ecosystem.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there's been a lot of challenges within the design market over the last couple of years. It's been really hard hit. Um, Elevating design within an organization can also be a challenge. Um, and I know that you've got some really great advice around this, but could you give us some insight into what it takes for making design a strategic powerhouse?
In my experience, the most important thing that I have been able to, like the best tool that I have in my toolbox is building relationships.
Mhm.
And I think it is through those relationships founded on authentic human connection and trust and an understanding and a curiosity about others, about the business, about what we're trying to accomplish, that really helps to advance one's ability to show the power of experience and the power of design.
Yeah.
So for me, it's been very much relationship focused. If I have the right relationships, then I can bring in the right craft. I can bring in the right point of view. I can bring in a lot of insights that we're getting from our research, our design research. Without the relationships, I'm just here saying, like, design is important. You
Yeah.
should listen to me.
Yeah.
But that's not always the path. And for
No.
me, and particularly in my experience, it is about building that trust on an individual basis that really helps. And again, I would say speaking the language of the business. So understanding that I have an awareness and I have a perspective on how we can actually improve our business outcomes. And the way that we can do that is through experience design
Yeah.
and helping partners see that it's not just about having a great strategy, it's not about just having great technology, that it is also about the little moments that matter.
Mhm.
And really, I would also say, minding the seams. So understanding what that broader ecosystem is, how are you looking more broadly across all the different parts of the business? How are you connecting dots and creating intersections? Because sometimes design is at the fulcrum of that. We have the best vantage point because we see across so many different aspects of the experience.
Yeah. And who would you say those relationships are with that you have to build? I take it it's obviously with the C-suite, it's with engineering, it's with product. Like what does that
Everybody.
look like? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think within every organization, you having an awareness of where influence is, where is the seats of power? Where's the
Yeah.
seats of influence? Sometimes it's for sure the C-suite, sometimes it's product, it's engineering, sometimes it could be someone over here in like an ancillary role, tangential role that just happens to be really um just have a ton of influence
Yeah.
over decisions. And so having an awareness of that, I would definitely say it's important that you've got, as a design leader, that you've got your product and tech. leads,
Yep.
that you all are in sync, that you can understand the challenges that each group has, and that you can advocate for each other when needed. Like I expect my tech partner to be able to advocate for design when I'm not in the room,
Yep.
um, and vice versa. And so I think um, having an awareness of where decisions are really being made. It's not always hierarchical. It's not always easy to see. It's not always just that C-suite. Sometimes it's folks that are just around.
Yeah. Makes sense. And Ellie, you've got such a varied background as well, from operations. I mean, you described it earlier, operations to design leadership, and obviously building a strong design culture is absolute key. How do you foster and scale an inclusive, thriving design ecosystem?
First and foremost, I think it's important that as a leader, you lead by example.
Yep.
So for me, I like to show up authentically. And what that means is I share things about me that make me me. Personal information, like here's my kid, these are my dogs, this is my husband, this is what I did over the weekend. Um, and just humanizing you as a leader, because sometimes it can be scary, I think. And showing up authentically, I think, is really important. My approach to leadership is what would if I were in their shoes, what would I want to know? And I always keep that in my mind. So for me, transparency is really important. Like as much transparency as I can give. Obviously, I can't give all the transparency, but as much as I possibly can. And in that regard, the context. So why are decisions being made? Um, what is the why to why this team exists, or why we pivoted work, or why are we focusing on something else now than we were before? And so I think that transparency and context is really important, and making sure that it's clear what the business drivers or the customer drivers are that is influencing a change, so that you can help people understand why it's important. I also think, as much as possible, involving the team in co-creation. What do we want this culture to be? What do we want to be known for? What is our purpose? What are our principles? How are we going to show up every day as a team? And then I think it's also about clear expectations. How do you create clarity? Because clear is kind, clear expectations for folks in terms of what I expect from them and what they should expect from me. And I want to have that dialogue with them as well. If I'm asking you, Kim, and saying, I expect X, Y, and Z from you, I expect you to tell me what you expect from me as
Yeah.
well, as a leader. And then, honestly, we need to have some fun and bring
Most
some,
important.
most important, you got to have some fun. I think it's about creating a community. So, how do you create community and a sense of belonging for people? And that is by having a clear vision, clear expectations, clear outcomes. It is about setting a destination vision and then backcasting from there. How do you sequence to get there? Because you can't go from A to Z in one fell swoop. It takes an evolution. And so, how do you help people understand, like, we're trying to go over here, but we're right here right now, and we're going to have to take these steps in order to get there? I think that helps people have a clear sense of, okay, do I want to be on this mission to go to this destination on this journey? Um, and if they are, then they understand how we're going to get there.
Love that. And before we wrap up, thank you, by the way, that was amazing. You mentioned there about being authentic. So, can you give us a fun or unexpected fact about yourself that most people don't know? Even people on your team,
Uh,
'cause it sounds like you tell them
yeah.
most things.
Well, I kind of have a new team now. So some of my old team members for sure know this.
Okay.
When I was about 6, I used to be in the rodeo. So I grew up in the Southwest of the United States in Arizona. And I'm Mexican American. My dad is Mexican. I grew up around horses and I really wanted to be in the rodeo. And so when I was 6, my godfather had a horse. I got a little tiny baby saddle. It was so small. And I would go out horseback riding, and he put me in the rodeo, and I would barrel race. So it's basically where you have these barrels and you ride the horse around them in a certain pattern. I wasn't very good. I didn't win anything. I was just in like Pee-wee rodeo.
I want to see pictures. Please tell me you have pictures and videos.
I do. I do. I have some no videos because that was a long time ago, but
Yeah, of course, of course. The old video,
definitely
the old video recorders, surely.
yes. It's one of those.
Oh, I love that. Well, Ellie, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the TDA Talks. Thank you so much for sharing all your insights. And to our listeners, stay tuned for more inspiring conversations with industry's top innovators. Thank you, Ellie.
Thank you, Kim.